Welcome to the Innovating Health podcast. This is your host, Hubert Zajicek. Today we will talk about the 5-minute pitch, your most essential tool in your toolkit as an entrepreneur. So this is a mainstay of our program, is probably, and whether it's the 3-minute pitch or the 4-minute pitch or the 5-minute pitch, you got to pick a number. It is generally much harder to deliver a concise, short pitch than it is a long one. And we believe that the 5-minute mark is just about as good as it gets for you. Generally, if you need to, you can cut it down to 3 minutes if you want from 5. But the main exercise is getting it down to 5 minutes. And this is not trivial. Now, you also have to make all the essential points in getting your point across and getting a real meeting. And so just to talk a little bit about what is the purpose. Number one, you need to have some sort of an elevator pitch or an introduction, right? For somebody to give you a few minutes of your time. So a 5-minute pitch is when you were invited to speak at a conference, at an angel group, at an investor meeting, and you have a slide deck and you are allowed to speak for 5 minutes, and then whatever happens thereafter. So it's a fairly typical scenario. Could also be at a pitch competition or something like that. And so however you got that 5-minute opportunity, maybe it was your elevator pitch, and that's another very important tool in your arsenal. You now have that 5-minute pitch and you have to deliver your slides. We generally think that 10 slides is a good number to have for that. It could be less. I think 10 is a good number. Guy Kawasaki formed a rule, called it the 10-20-30 rule. So we're going kind of off that. Ours is more the 10-5-30 rule. 10 slides in his playbook, 20 minutes and 30 font. That may be for your next meeting. In our case, 10 slides, 5 minutes, 30 font. The 30 font is still a great exercise and important for you to pay attention to be either at 30 font or thereabouts. And what does that mean? It means that you're going to have to be very deliberate about what you're going to put on your slide. So let's talk a little bit about what slides you should have and what are the most essential slides. So I came across a graphic not too long ago where a variety of organizations were compared as to what they request of anyone that pitches to them. And those are organizations like 500 Startups and Sequoia Capital and Guy Kawasaki and others. So they have some guidelines on the webpage. Pitch them, here are the slides that they require of you. And I was looking at this and comparing this to ours, and of course they're very close. There's no secret slide that one of them has that nobody else has. But there are 6 slides that you absolutely must have. And all these organizations, including us, require those. And first of all, is the problem slide. So you absolutely need to have a problem slide that concisely explains to me what the problem is. Now in healthcare, we all know this is potentially not very trivial to explain a complex healthcare problem in 30 seconds. If you do the math on our 5 minutes and 10 slides, you have about 30 seconds per slide, right? And the immediate following slide should be your solution. And so you got your problem slide, you got your solution slide. The third slide that everyone agreed you should have is business model. Now, in some healthcare settings, let's say a pharma setting or some healthcare devices, maybe it's too premature at the early stage to even talk about your business model. But in many, many cases, digital health and in other cases, the investor wants to know roughly, what do you think? How are you going to sell this thing? Or how are you going to find someone to sell it for you? The next one is competition. And that actually, out of all the slide decks I see, is most often omitted out of these 6 slides, thinking that I don't want to do the research on all these other people, or more importantly, nobody else is doing what we're doing, and therefore I don't need that slide. You do need a competition slide, and you do need to put the work into finding out who does anything remotely close to what you're doing. And it is extremely rare that there is no one doing anything you're doing, probably, or hopefully. There are not many that do exactly what you're doing, but they're going to be iterations of what you do, and they might deliver portions of your solution. And then obviously you can always go with, well, what is it that people do right now to solve that problem? And if it's doing nothing, then nothing is your competition as well, because you have to convince people to do something that you want them to do over the current status quo, which is doing nothing. So that is one not to skip, but chances are you will find some that qualify as competition, and off you go. The fifth slide that everyone agrees on you must have is the founding team. In many cases, I'm speaking about early stage ventures here, you are it. You are the jockey, and everyone is betting on the jockey. So you are the person that is non-replaceable at that early stage. In other words, when an investor invests in a startup and you decide to move to Tahiti and never respond to any phone calls anymore, or whatever else happened that makes you unreachable or unable to perform your duties, it means that the venture is dead and the investment is gone. So early on, there is a very low likelihood that there is anything recoverable, and therefore the founding team is extremely important to me. Ideally, I see more than one founder, of course, or somebody on the founding team. And again, same principle here. If one of you disappears on us, disappearing is not a good example. That's never happened. But I don't know. Life happens, right? So something happens to you. Is there anybody else who can pick it up? And then lastly, if you are pitching, in most cases, you are going to be fundraising. And if you omit the fundraising slide when you are coming to me for fundraising, then I'm confused. So please put a fundraising slide in there and tell me what it is you need. We can go into more detail at another podcast on all those slides, but tell me what it is you're asking for, what you want. And by the way, this is generally good advice. I think if you're meeting with someone and there's a clear situation where this person could do something for you, tell them how they can help you. You'd be surprised how many people will just want to help you just because, and give them a pathway to that. What it shows me is that you have thought it through and you know kind of what your asks are. So that's a few details on that. I also like to see a market slide. How big is your market? Show me your competitive advantage, your secret sauce, whatever you want to call it, the mechanism of the invention or the twist of your company. What makes it special? Now, remember, this doesn't mean you need to tell me every secret in your company. I actually don't want to know any of your secrets because this could potentially jeopardize your intellectual property. But I need to know enough to understand what it is you're doing. And I need to at least have a way of gauging, is this special or not? By the way, bonus advice, VCs don't sign NDAs generally, and they shouldn't need to at the early stage to just have a conversation with you. As a VC, and we're counting ourselves in the same category, making venture style investments early, we just would be conflicted in a hurry if we start signing NDAs. Now, maybe later, if absolutely necessary in due diligence, or if we join the board, there are scenarios where that is within the right scope necessary and, of course, understandable. But that is not a starting point, and this is for way further down the road. Another thing that we'd like to see is your potentially advisory board. I'd like to see a slide on that. I'd like to see potentially a use of funds slide as well that shows me what you're going to do with the money that you're raising, and also a tractional milestone slide. Where are you now, where you're going to be in a year, especially with the money that you are now raising as a result of these conversations you're having, because you delivered such a great 5-minute pitch. When you're doing this in person in a more formal setting, remember the basics. What I'm trying to say is you have 5 minutes. There are organizations, there are pitch competitions, there are groups that will cut you off at 5 minutes. If they say 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. It is best for you to plan and know exactly how much time you have. Let's just assume here 5 minutes. And then absolutely be able to time yourself to 5 minutes. And if necessary, and if they don't give you a timer, then have a timer with you and know where you are. Find your cadence, know when you have to maybe slow down a little bit, or more importantly, speed up a tiny bit. Don't cram too many words into your presentation. People's brains have to follow you, and they're hearing for the first time. The setting with a room and a microphone and a speaker's lectern or something like that. Familiarize yourself with the microphone. Don't think that's a sign of weakness at all. It's professional for you to go check it out, to maybe even do, if you have an opportunity to say a few words into the microphone, to see how the microphone responds, how you need to hold it. If you haven't ever done that before, there are different types of microphones. Some of them you have to do nothing. Others you really have to speak directly into them. Know how this clicker works. Just like today in Zoom days, we all know that stuff happens and maybe, forgot to unmute yourself. But the more professional you can be with these simple things, the better. Again, nobody holds it against you if you make a small mistake or something. But if you don't make it, it shows me that you were prepared. Those are cheap bonus points to pick up along the way that show me that you're a professional. And ultimately, that's what you want to convince me of, that you're taking this seriously. And if I'm going to back you either with money or talent or my time or my relationships or network, I want to have as many assurances as possible that you are the real deal, that you're taking this very seriously. Try to figure out what the dress code is, maybe a little bit more of something that I like to do and seeing people. It's always best to know and have an idea. It's just going to make you feel better about yourself. You don't want to walk in and everyone ends up wearing a suit and you came in your flip-flops. Maybe it doesn't matter. This kind of depends on you. Maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe you're so wonderful that everyone will see beyond that. But generally, if you haven't done the research on it, your investors will just assume, or the audience will assume, that you just kind of didn't do your homework. And again, this is a minor thing. You take it for what it's worth. I personally feel more comfortable if I see someone that I feel like fits in. Let's just not have that be the topic of conversation. And I think that's the main point here is let's not have that be what people talk about. Let's have them talk about the opportunity. Let's have them talk about the risk associated with your investment, but not about how you presented it or how you couldn't find the clicker or how you clearly didn't understand that this is at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown New York or whatever, and not at a beach in Florida. On your presentation, just a couple more pointers. And it's often very good to find a hook at the beginning or an attention grabber at the beginning, something that gets people thinking. So that is usually associated with the problem that you are describing, right? Because that'll be your first slide. So it's a good idea to think about what it is you could tell people that they can relate to, and also that grabs their attention. There's nothing like having said something at the beginning that gets people interested in you, and you need to hold their attention throughout those 5 minutes. Be clear, be concise, use simple language, avoid lingo and jargon unless that's called for or necessary. I see this in healthcare a lot. People want to impress others. They want to show they're also one of the gang and they're also know all the lingo. That's fine. You can flash that every time you want. If you're in front of that audience, like they're all doctors, let's say, you need to speak at that level, sure. But other than that, with angel investors or VCs or a general audience, just don't. And if you have some jargon, just immediately follow it with the layman's term just to get them on board. There's nothing gained by impressing them, and they have no clue what you were talking about. And then also leave with a call to action. So just like with the slides, I want you to leave something behind for them to act upon. Maybe there's 3 bullet points that you're saying, here are 3 things that I'm looking for, or here are the next 3 steps, or here's how you can help us. Just leave them with something. Otherwise, maybe they aren't totally clear on what it is you want. Show them that you want that. And so that gives somebody a chance. They might not have the money. They might come up to you and say, you asked to be connected to, let's say, cardiologists. I am one, or my brother's one. I'd be happy to connect you to them. I think they'd be fascinated by it. There you go. You give them something actionable, and they're willing to help you. So in the startup circles and also among the investors, VCs, you name it, people have really a desire to help you, to figure out ways to help you. I mean, there are limits, right? If they're not investing in you and this is just a favor they're doing you, they will very often, more often than not, do it. And that's wonderful. Now, don't leave a chance untried. Give them something actionable so they can act upon that. So that's the advice I have for your 5-minute pitch. All the best to you and Godspeed. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Innovating Health podcast. Be sure to follow, give us 5 stars, and subscribe to stay updated to the latest cutting-edge innovations and revolutionary ideas shaping the future of healthcare.